समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
On February 17 or Tuesday this week, National Green Tribunal, in fact, a 6-member bench, including judges headed by the chairperson, Justice Prakash Srivastava, other judges and expert members, 6 members together, gave final clearance to what the government calls as the holistic development of the Great Nicobar Island. Great Nicobar Island is the southernmost territory of India, of Republic of India. This is your regular map of India. You can see the Andaman Nicobar Islands. This is the last one. That is the island that we are talking about. Now, this has been a very controversial issue. In 2023, National Green Tribunal had raised some questions. Those questions, they say now, have been answered. They have reports. I will take you through those details as we go along. And now they have lifted all objections. So work can go on. Of course, activists who had challenged this in NGT will now go to court. They can go to court and they will definitely go to court. However, as of now, the project is cleared. At the same time, Jairam Ramesh from the opposition Congress party and Bhupender Yadav, the environment minister, they've been also arguing on social media and also in exchange of letters. I will also share with you 2 stories from the print, one by Ruchi Bhattar on the NGT clearance and second by Soumya Pillai on the argument between Bhupender Yadav, the environment minister, and Jairam Ramesh. This is an important project in a place which is sensitive for multiple reasons. First of all, it is sensitive for strategic reasons. All the 3 major sea routes in the world, or at least in this part of the world. One coming through the Cape of Good Hope, that's the oldest route. That was the route used until the Suez Canal was built. It is also used now very often when the Houthis, for example, are able to block the Red Sea route. If they block the Red Sea route at Bab el-Mandab or Gulf of Aden, then it becomes impossible to use the Suez Canal. So Cape of Good Hope becomes your main route. Then in any case, the route from Gulf of Aden and Bab el-Mandab and from Strait of Hormuz as well, from which the Middle Eastern oil, the Arab and Persian oil, Iranian oil goes to the entire world. All of this shipping passes through this area. In fact, all of this passes through a channel called the 6-degree channel, which because of these island territories falls within India's exclusive economic zone. And you will see that as I explain the map to you. I will bring the map to you on your screens in just a minute. Second, it's ecologically sensitive because this is really an empty island on which very few people live, very few aborigines live. Otherwise, there is no development, there is no human development there. So it's basically all forested riverine area. This is a very virgin forest. There's been no exploitation there for millennia. The greatest sensitivity comes from where it's located, from its geography. And I will explain that to you with our new map. This I will explain to you with this larger map. When you see this larger map tells you the entire eastern coast of India, looking out into the Bay of Bengal, looking east into the Bay of Bengal, and then it goes straight and there is nothing. Bay of Bengal is a vast empty expanse. You can see all of the Indian eastern coast beginning with West Bengal, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, all of the Indian eastern coast, then a relatively small coastline of Bangladesh. That is something that Mohammad Yunus has been talking about all this while. A relatively small but very significant coastline of Bangladesh. After that, you see the Myanmar coast. Further to the east, as you come down from Myanmar, You come down from Myanmar, you come below the mouths of the Irrawaddy River. You go further down about 250 kilometers, then you see the tiny island chain, 5 islands, very tiny, very tiny. In fact, these are Cocoa Island. These are called Cocoa Islands. The largest one is called the Great Cocoa Island. It is all of 14.75 square kilometers. But you know, in the sea, any tiny territory also matters. We know how Chinese are trying to conjure up islands or island territories in South China Sea and those areas by just taking sand and dumping it on shallow areas and to say that this is an island, this is my territory, because once you have territory in the sea, then you have territorial waters around it, and then you have much vaster exclusive economic zones around it. That's why any territory in the sea, any island matters a lot. So there are these 5 Cocoa Islands, 4 on one reef, 1 on another reef. Just 55 kilometers from these Cocoa Islands, you see India's large island territories. It's a string of 572 islands stretching over 750 kilometers. And remember, these islands, each of these islands then determines your territorial waters and your exclusive economic zone as well. In fact, if you see this string of islands, these divide Bay of Bengal with Andaman Sea. You can see this string of islands beginning with the Andamans, and then it comes to Nicobar Islands, ends with the Great Nicobar Island. That is the largest of the Nicobar Islands. That's where some people, a few thousand, have been living for some time. That's also a place where the Navy already has a base called INS Baz. Baz means hawk. INS Baz, it has an airstrip which has now been extended. It used to be 3,000 feet. It's now become 6,000 feet. That said, on Cocoa Island itself, Myanmar's army, or Tatmadaw as it's called, they have also extended their existing airstrip to 2,300 meters. That's almost 7,500 to 8,000 feet. That's a major airstrip. However, there have been many stories about the Chinese presence there, that the Chinese have been eyeing Cocoa Island as part of their Pearl of String strategy. But so far, there is no evidence of the Chinese being there. I am explaining this to you so we understand why Greater Nicobar Island, why this project is so sensitive. Now, Port Blair, which is now called Vijayapuram, is the big island in the Andaman Group. That is where the capital of the territory is located. That's also where the Tri-Service Command to control the island territories and around is also located. It is commanded by 3-star officers of the Army, Navy, Air Force. Right now, a Naval Vice Admiral is in command. Then you look further east. As you look further east from this region, the same Bay of Bengal takes you to the Myanmarese coast, but more importantly, it takes you to the Thai coastline, which means between the Thai coastline and India's eastern coast, there is almost no land. And that Thai coastline, if you see this, in some places it's very narrow. There is an isthmus-like territory. That is something that we had spoken about in an earlier Cut the Clutter, of which we'll share a link with you. That's where we had talked about a plan that the Thais had instigated, I suppose, or supported by the Chinese to cut open that isthmus and create a route like Suez Canal or Panama Canal for shipping to cut through that to go east to west, west to east. If that happens, then India's eastern coast gets eastern seaboard gets completely exposed. Between that eventuality, and in any case, between anything coming in from the east to threaten India or the Indian eastern seaboard, which is very important, which is very long and very large, along which really important cities also exist. The only protection for the eastern seaboard for India or for any threat from the east, from the eastern flank, is the island territories that we have. That is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And that's the reason successive governments have tried to develop military bases there and also military presence there. Ammunition has been stocked. Some fighter planes are also positioned, mostly Sukhoi 30s. Sometimes refuelers visit there. Very often P-8Is of the Navy visit there. This is, as maritime security goes and as maritime strategic interests go, this is among the most significant most sensitive, most opportunity-laden, but also most threat-laden zones in the world. And this is what India is responsible for. If India is to be a net security provider for the Indian Ocean region or the Asia Pacific region, then India has to have a very strong presence on these islands. At the same time, if India has to protect its own interests in Indian Ocean region, then to have presence, substantive presence on these islands is very important. I will now request you to move further east and south on the same map. See where the Andaman Nicobar chain ends. Where it ends lies one of the larger Nicobar islands. This is the Car Nicobar chain. The largest island is the Great Nicobar Island. Great Nicobar Island is 921 square kilometers, so it's quite sizable. When you look at that island, see one more landmark. This island is the southernmost territory of India. This, from the closest Indonesian territory, is just 145 kilometers. The closest Indonesian territory is called Rondo Island. Rondo Island is in the larger Aceh region. Aceh region, you remember, was hit by a big earthquake. In fact, the region between Greater Nicobar and Aceh is sitting almost on top of a really significant fault, a seismic fault or a geological fault. You can choose your description. This is the one that had got angry in 2004 and which had unleashed the great tsunami that killed nearly 250,000 people in many, many countries, including India. Aceh, of course, was the most devastated of all. This is in that area. So this is that close to Indonesia. However, you go further east. When you go further east and little bit south, then you see a strait. This is the Malacca Strait. Malacca Strait is where 30 to 33%, 35%, definitely more than 1/3 of the global shipping, merchant shipping passes. That is one of the most significant choke points in the world. In places it's quite narrow. This is also an area of serious interest for the Quad. So this makes us understand what is the big significance of these islands, particularly in this case, what we are talking about specifically, which is the Great Nicobar Island, because that is where a 30-year project, a 3-decade project is now being implemented. This has got the Green Tribunal clearance. Now let us try and understand what is the Great Nicobar Island. So I bring you to the next picture on your screen. That map that we've been showing and which comes up again on your screens, you might think it's too detailed, it's taking you to too many places. I will also give you a more specific version of this. So please see this one now. When you see this more specific version, this gives us more clarity on, say, the Thai coastline, on Myanmar's coastline, and also on Indian mainland, the peninsular Indian coastline, and also the Bangladeshi coastline, which also marks the mouths of the Ganges. Which then brings us, or maybe we can move on, to the island in contention now. This is the Great Nicobar Island. So see this picture, please. This is the Great Nicobar Island. Great Nicobar Island is about 921 square kilometers. Most of it is tribal or forest reserved area, some of which is now being freed up for this project. This project is being implemented by Andaman and Nicobar Islands Integrated Development Corporation, ANIIDC. And this has, as I explained to you, you can see from this picture, geostrategic, defense, commerce, ecotourism, industries, not that much industry, coastal tourism, tourism will be important, and commercial implications, because a big transshipment container terminal will be set up here. Now look at this very interesting territory. Our most distant territory to the east and the south that we are talking about. I told you 921 square kilometers. This is marked by rivers. You see a river, a major river, which runs north-south called Galathea River. Galathea River opens out in Galathea Bay. That is where this project will be located. A little bit to the south of Galathea Bay, maybe a little bit west, but mostly south of Galathea Bay is the most distant point in Indian territory. This has been named Indra Point. The project will come up generally in this area. When you see this map, you see different colors. Most of the map is in some shades of green. These are tribal and forest areas. But then you see regions which are in a lighter shade of beige. They are on the southeastern side and also on the southwestern side. These are areas where development can take place, where either non-reserved territories were located or those territories which are now being freed up, where nearly 1 million trees will be cut, that is 9,64,000 trees will be cut, for which National Green Tribunal has ordered compensatory afforestation or tree plantation in 261.5 square kilometers in Haryana, mostly the Aravalli zone, and also in Madhya Pradesh. Once again, see the map of the island. You see Galatia River coming north-south. Galatia River was named after an expeditionary Danish ship that discovered it. An expeditionary Danish ship called Galathea discovered this in the 19th century, and that's how this river is named. There is another river, and I got curious, that's named after Amrit Kaur. That is R. Amrit Kaur. R stands for Rajkumari. That's Rajkumari Amrit Kaur River that goes east-west. That river is named after India's first health minister for many years and also Princess of Kapurthala. That's why Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, maybe she visited there at some point, because the island is home to one of the most threatened, probably the most threatened microscopic tribes in the world, the Shompen. The total population of Shompen and Nicobarese tribes, in fact, at this point is just 1,761, and they've been there forever with no contact with fellow humans, so they are also seen to be very prone to any infections from outsiders. The Danish expeditionary ship Galathea, which was among the first to reach there, they in fact were looking for minerals because that was the colonial interest. Another bay-like formation on the eastern coast is called Campbell Bay. Campbell Bay is named after a British officer, Archibald Campbell, who apparently landed there or marked this area. He died in 1843, so I presume he was an East India Company official. I also suspect that in the course of time, this will acquire a new name. The Congress party, Jairam Ramesh, has been saying that if you have to establish a project on Great Nicobar Island, then Campbell Bay is much less environmentally destructive than Galathea. You are choosing Galathea purely on financial, economic and technical considerations, not giving precedence to environmental considerations, and that is something that Bhupendra Yadav has disagreed with. All of this said, now that we understand the importance, geostrategic, geoeconomic, cultural of this little piece of land, we have to understand what the project is. This is an integrated, as the name indicates, it's an integrated development project with a bunch of things happening. What are these 4 things? Let me just list 4 for you. One is Galathea Bay International Container Transshipment Terminal or ICTT. Second is Great Nicobar International Airport. There's an airport already, but it will be expanded into an international airport. This at the peak, this will be big enough to handle 4,000 passengers in the peak hour. This will be in the northeastern parts of Galathea Bay, so a little bit deeper inland in the island. Third will be Great Nicobar Gas and Solar Plant. This will produce electricity because once you have all these facilities there and people living there and commerce there and some industry coming there, you will need electricity. This plant, which will run on gas, which is cleaner, it's not clean, but it's much cleaner than coal, etc. And solar plant, that will be a 450 megawatt plant. So the third element in the integrated project is Great Nicobar Gas and Solar Plant, GNSPP. And the fourth will be 2, and this is important, 2 new greenfield coastal cities. They will be tiny. One of these 2 townships will come towards the southeastern side, which is closer to Galathea Bay, and the other one will be on the southwestern side, a little bit to the west of Galathea Bay. These will be the 2 urban developments. As we can see, this has defense, military, shipping, which is commercial, and also tourism, etc. aspects. The most important, however, is the strategic aspect, because once you have strong naval and air power positioned here, this will become a formidable, unsinkable aircraft carrier of unlimited capability 24 by 7 in the most distant territory of India, the closest to Southeast Asia and the closest to the choke point of Malacca Strait. Now, I don't know how relations go with China. Maybe they will remain peaceful forever, hopefully, but it is always better to cover all bases. And in that sense, this is a very important spot from India's national interest. And that is the argument that the National Green Tribunal also finally took to clear this project. The report said, and I quote from the report, hyper-technical approach should not be adopted, ignoring ground reality and national security. They also said they'd sent out a committee which has brought in a report which provides ground truthing for all the fears, environmental fears. They say the tribals will not be affected. They'll be deep inside. There'll be no development around them. And they say this is a key intersection zone of Indian and Chinese strategic interests. And that is something that has to be kept in mind. They make a reference. They say we make reference from whatever we have read to the Chinese string of pearls and India's Look East policy. This is a step forward in India's Look East policy versus the Chinese string of pearls. That's where the project stands now. I know there will be further legal challenges, but the chances are that this will ultimately see the light of the day. It's a 30-year time frame. But remember, this zone, these islands are India's first line of defense from the eastern side. So ultimately, the strategic logic, I believe, will prevail.